Hello, Fountain here, and today we're going to talk about where does our desire to always be right, or to be right most of the time, come from, and how can we overcome it, and potentially even help others with overcoming their need to be right. Not because we want to be right, but because we want to genuinely help them grow and come from a more compassionate place. Anyway, so I guess it's pretty obvious for a lot of people, but not always all, and as to where our desire to be right comes from. Obviously, if we want to get real primal, it's sort of to do with survival, but not all of us are necessarily living in that situation anymore, and so it's not necessarily always the best thing to be coming from that space. Obviously, that can continue to be perpetuated through particular cultures, most cultures. So through culture, through religions, through schooling, through all kinds of things. Often you get rewarded for having the one right thing, and you may get vilified for not getting that, or choosing to have the opinion on that thing, or getting the right answer or whatever it is, and getting it wrong. Sometimes people use it because it's a mask for insecurity. Sometimes admitting something wrong can actually lead to drastic consequences. But sometimes it's even more drastic if the ownership is not taken about being wrong as well. So that's always good to consider. Sometimes it's just a ego thing. It's an intellectual sort of elitism thing. Sometimes it's a mental health thing, like some things like anxiety. It just provides more comfort for the person if there's not too many variables involved. And to be honest, a lot of it usually just stems from some kind of, people might call it trauma, you might call it something else. It can be major, but it doesn't have to be major. It just could be something really minor, just some sort of patterning that you picked up from a very young age. And so I guess I just want to move on to, obviously, tips to help with, not always having to consistently have to be right all the time. And obviously, step one is to identify where does that come from. And sometimes that's easier said than done. So sometimes you might need a mirror in the form of another person that you trust, obviously, to help you uncover that. Or it could just be your own sort of introspection and observing and trying to figure out where these things come from for yourself. Another tip would be choosing to give up control and evaluate your social skills and realize that acceptance is not necessarily a weakness. Most of the time we're not living in dire survival situations, so accepting something, it's not necessarily going to mean that it ends your life in that sense. So yeah, it's not always necessarily a weakness. Another one would be to deliberately lose an argument on purpose and sit with what that feels like for you, and see if you can transmute that or learn something from that, or even just sit with it. You don't have to judge it, and just see what that's like. It's another thing, because the more you can do those things, sometimes it can just become more like comfortable and can be less kind of heavy, if I can say. Sometimes not, but life kind of ebbs and flows, and one day things are good and the other day they feel a little bit harder than usual, and that's okay. So another one would be prioritizing, I guess, being compassionate and using your heart and using nature, I guess, as an inspiration. Like, the heart isn't necessarily interested in polarization and dualistic kind of beliefs, and nature's, it's not that interested in it as well. It's, making decisions and acting from the heart space, and also using inspiration from nature to really be able to lean in to other people's sort of opinions with actual curiosity, and not having some kind of judgment around it, like, oh, what can I really learn? Like, oh, I never really thought that. Of course they would have thought that. That's why, and just being like, oh, having some actual understanding as to where they're coming from. And eventually it can become an inner standing, which is another kind of level of awareness and consciousness. And yeah, I mean, we're not all going to be like some kind of Buddha, monk, Dalai Lama, whatever, but it can definitely help us, which then helps everybody else to be able to, talk with people that have differing kind of beliefs than our own. Sticking to your own particular box or whatever that may be and never venturing out isn't always very helpful. And then the last one I'll talk about is being open to change your mind, and your beliefs and ideas should grow and they should change throughout your life. An example, I don't imagine every single one of you would want to still wear the same clothes that you did when you were 15 for various reasons. Maybe you didn't like the colour, maybe it's just not a type of fashion you like wearing, maybe you don't even like that style of clothing from whatever year you were 15, or maybe you just don't fit the clothes. They're too big, they're too small, they're too short, whatever, So, I know that's a very simplified kind of example of how things change and how your beliefs and perceptions can change on something, but it's always important to obviously have your own centre, but also be able to know when just to go, that's cool. I have a differing opinion, but I don't need to make sure that they have that same opinion or that same belief as myself. And I guess that's where different styles of communication can really start happening. Obviously with the use of internet, it can really cause a lot of polarization, a lot of duality, a lot of the kind of intellectual elitism, the need to be right, logical left side brain thinking. And there's not necessarily something bad or wrong about that either. But if you want a more sort of wholesome and full way to go about things, it's the integration of the right and the left. It's the integration of many parts of yourself. So yeah, the logic, the creative, the thinker, the feeler, all of that. So you're welcome to leave your own sort of comments, your own beliefs if you want. I'm not the teacher. I'm just here to share some ponderings, and always going to be a student, right? So you can leave those in the comment section down below. If you've got any questions, you can leave that in the comment section down below. You can also find me on various social media platforms, and they are in the description box down below as well. And I will see you in the next vlog.